What is classical music? Well, it turns out to be a very misused term. In this concert, Bernstein ends up answering a different question and takes a quick but comprehensive romp through music history in the process. By the end, you'll know the difference between Bach and Brahms, and you'll understand that writing a fugue is like building a Ferris wheel. That's a typical kind of Bernstein connection, and it makes perfect sense. By the way, he wrote all the scripts for these concerts himself and chose the music. The concerts were recorded live. On Saturday mornings, Bernstein would have a rehearsal with the orchestra at 8 a.m., a dress rehearsal at 10 a.m., and the concert was at noon. Talk about a tough schedule. And there's another bit of musical history that you may have noticed already. Along with the strange glasses on the musicians, you have probably noticed that other than a harpist who shows up occasionally, you don't see any women in this orchestra. There were no full-time women players in it before 1966. You know, that was probably a function of the times, and I'm glad to report that those times have changed. There are lots of women in today's New York Philharmonic and in most other orchestras around the world as well. Not to take away anything from the guys of a few decades ago. I'm sure you'll agree that they played very, 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 very well. But it's always good to have a woman in the orchestra.
Now, the two giant musical names of these first 50 years of the 18th century were Bach and Handel, especially Bach, because he took all the rules that the composers who lived before him had been experimenting with and fiddling with, and he made those rules as perfect as a human being can make them. For instance, take that form called the fugue. Now, the rules of a fugue are something like the printed directions you get when you buy an erector set. They tell you exactly how to build a house or a fire truck or a Ferris wheel. You start a Ferris wheel by attaching one metal section to another on the floor. Then you add one exactly 4 notches higher, and then another 5 notches higher than that, and so on. Then you make the wheel that goes around the whole construction. Well, now, that's just what Bach does in a fugue. Take this one, for instance, from his 4th Brandenburg Concerto. He lays the foundation for his Ferris wheel by starting with the viola. Now, that's the first section. Then he adds the second section by a violin, exactly 4 notches higher, which means, in musical terms, 4 notes higher and 4 bars later. Now, the third piece is attached by another violin 5 notches higher. And the fourth piece by the cello and the bass way down underneath. And finally, the 5th piece is put into place by the flute way up on top. Now the foundation is built, and Bach can start surrounding it with his wheel. Now, the wonderful thing about that foundation is that it's not just 5 separate bits, one at a time. They're all joined together, which means that whenever a new instrument is added, the others still go on playing something else. So that by the time the 5th piece is attached, by the flute, you have 5 different parts all going at once, just as the 5 different pieces of the erector set are all joined together at once. Now, listen to it all together. Isn't that marvelous? You see, that's classical perfection.